I have a question for you. Do you find it hard to build with certain blocks, like diorite? Well, lots of people struggle to use certain blocks in their builds, and there can be a feeling that some blocks are just bad. But is that really the case? Are there really bad blocks? In today's video, I want to explain to you why you're wrong about diorite, and I'll share 3 tips about helping to work with difficult blocks. My first tip for you with a different set of blocks is often you will need to change your mindset. Maybe the new block won't work so well in your default building style. Or maybe with a new block you won't be able to build as big as you normally do. Both a change in style or scale can be off-putting. Personally, changes can feel uncomfortable. I don't know about you, but in life I love comfort. One big way I get comfort in my life is through rhythm and routine, and when it's missing, it can really throw me off. In building, I can get into a great flow with the style, block choices, scale, or a combination of all those aspects. So adding in new blocks or 2 can really throw me off my rhythm and bring me out of my comfort zone. I can find myself getting into this mode without noticing, and it's only when I actively try something new that I notice. Take this island for example. It wasn't until I actively went to build with diorite that I noticed that all the builds look the same. Now, don't get me wrong, having builds in an area looking the same can be great, but it can also be very repetitive. And it can lead to the feeling of less and less creativity and more like you are just copying and pasting the same build over and over. And how can you get out of this repetition? By creating yourself a challenge with some new and different blocks. Challenging yourself every so often can really help you progress in your building techniques and help change your mindset with new blocks. My next tip is a practical one for incorporating new blocks into your builds, and that is to work on your blending of these blocks with the other blocks around them. Unless you specifically want the block to stand out, combining it well with the other blocks in your build will really help you out. This will help the block feel more natural and let your eye rest on the build more, rather than being drawn to the pain points in a build. For this, I have 2 approaches. Firstly, when building with my block palette, I try to find at least 2 other supporting blocks. These blocks will be used in the build to either break up your hard block or to start the transition from one section of your build to another. In our build bridge today, we have diorite, and I tried to find blocks with a similar color but that are less busy. And for this, I've gone with polished diorite, calcite, and white mushroom blocks. They occupy a similar color space, but as I said, they feel just a little less busy for me. To help with finding complementing blocks, you can jump into a creative world and just look through the block list yourself. Or there are websites like blockpalettes.com where you can select a block and it will show you a selection of block palette ideas for this block. But blending doesn't just mean blocks with the same color. Finding blocks that are different but work well is also important. Here, I like dark oak with the diorite and dark prismarine with the netherrack. No matter if you're dealing with similar or different blocks, I highly recommend spending some time in a creative world, placing these blocks next to each other to get a real feel of how these blocks play together, to see if they really work well side by side. The second part of blending for me involves making new blocks. Yes, Minecraft has a lot of blocks, but we can still make more with some little tricks. In reality, this looks like adding glow lichen, trapdoors, buttons, or leaves around blocks. This helps create new textures and depth to your blocks, essentially creating more options for every block in the game. I truly believe glow lichen is the best addition to the game in recent years. To me, it is as if we have the possibility to create mossy variants of every block in the game. Plus, it adds a lovely, subtle lighting to your builds. And the final tip I have for you today is probably the hardest and most frustrating. You will not be an expert with these new blocks straight away. Only over time and with practice will you get better at using these blocks. Trust me when I say I wish I was amazing at something straight away, but that is sadly not how life works. I think this can be tough, as it's so easy to compare yourself to others. I often find myself comparing myself to other builders, and I'm instantly frustrated and put off trying because none of my builds are at their level. But we need to leave space and time for learning. For me, that looks like a creative world just for testing ideas. It's not even my regular creative world, it's just a space I can essentially doodle with blocks. It's full of parts of builds, block palettes, and not fully thought out ideas. All I use it for is a brain dump for all my ideas. After a while of practice in this world, an idea can graduate into my regular creative world. And it is at this point it becomes a more fully fleshed out build idea. But it's important that I have a place that I can allow myself to be bad. It's fine if an idea doesn't work. I leave it there so I can reference it later on. And who knows, maybe over time I can figure out how to make it work. Bad builds are all part of the process. But I do hope you can agree that this is not a bad build, and that Diorite itself is not a bad block. There are no bad blocks, just builders learning how to use them.